Welcome to the Earned First podcast. My name is Arun Sidaman. I'm founding editor at Earned First. And today we are joined by Kelly Bennett, who's the founder and managing director of 1+1 Communications, joining us all the way from New Zealand. Kelly, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Arun. It's a pleasure, absolute pleasure to be here.
So it's an interesting time for the public relations world. And I think you have some relevant experience in this regard. You had worked for Omnicom
Mm-hmm.
for many years back in the day. You founded TBWA PR in New Zealand back in 2006, and then of course you founded 11 PR. I guess that was part of the same thing. TBW PR and 11
Yeah, yeah,
were the same group essentially.
yeah.
And that was in New Zealand you founded it, and then 11 launched in Australia.
In New Zealand first for about a
Yeah,
year, I think, and then Australia thereafter. Yeah.
right. And 11 has gone on to become, I believe, Omnicom's biggest PR brand in Australia.
Oh, certainly in our part of the world, yes, and it will
Yeah.
be along with Fleischmann Hillard, as I understand it. The two lead
Mm,
brands.
right. And along the way, you've seen, I guess, as we are now experiencing in high focus, but you've seen brands come and go. We had Porto Novelli um, quite early on came to the South Pacific, and I think was pretty successful. But that brand has now gone, from what I
Yeah,
understand, in
it's just
Australia.
being phased out. Yeah, and I don't know what the
Mm,
provenance of that brand is, but that's many, many, many decades gone with a
yeah,
swoosh of a pen or a keyboard strike.
yeah, yeah. Interesting when brands are retired, and we can talk about that in a moment. Of course, Fleischmann is still there.
Yeah.
So you have Fleischmann and 11, basically, from the Omnicom
Mm.
side. Weber Shandwick, I don't know how much you know about the Interpublic side of things, but Weber Shandwick was bought out by its managers a few years ago. So I think they still use the brand,
Mm.
but it's not owned by what is now Omnicom. Um, and I don't believe Golin exists in that part of the world. So it's really driven by Omnicom. Um, and I guess it's largely driven by 11. How do you view all of the changes that have been announced this week? Of course, we knew some of them were coming.
It's hard to keep
Um,
up. It genuinely is
mm,
hard to keep up. And I have a number of thoughts on all of this, which, as you say, are informed by 7 years I had with TBWA, the network,
mhm,
in what was a completely different era, I would say.
mm,
We all watch Mad Men, but between Mad Men and today have been different iterations of what our industry, the ad industry, could look like, and so very significant period in my professional life. I think
mm.
TBWA in one of those years won 2 Grand Prix at Cannes, so was
Wow.
punching supremely above its creative weight, and was a highly regarded and revered part of the network purely because of its creative output. So I yeah I arrived there at a time never having worked in an ad agency before.
Mm,
Mid 30s, I would say. I had 2 kids, mortgage, and no opportunity other than to succeed. I had to succeed in making a fist of that time with TBWA, and so 11, such as it was born out of TBWA PR. And the name 11 came from the fact we were based at 11 Merrill Drive in Auckland. There were about 11 of us on a good day.
mm,
Um, and so, yeah, that business was successful, was then exported to Australia. Um, And if one of my sort of modest superpowers is about connecting with people and seeing talent in them, I saw a guy called Rob Lowe who ran 11 in the early days, now runs a very successful business called Poem. And,
Mm-hmm.
much of the early success that 11 has in Australia is due to him. I just kind
Mm.
of set up the brand and, some infrastructure and a little bit of guidance. But it's been fascinating watch that brand grow in Australia as it has done so successfully off the back of a really creative period for TBWA in
Mm-hmm.
Sydney, in Melbourne, doing internationally acclaimed work. Um, but I felt like after I had spent 7 years inside that network, I had this desire, latent desire to have a crack at doing something on my own. And so I left to set up 1+1, which at the time was designed to be a fusion of the best practices that I could take from the network and network agency environment and
Mm.
sort of put them into, in our industry in New Zealand anyway, I would suggest a sort of a tired approach to corporate comms.
Mm.
And so that was our sweet spot from the get-go, and it's worked exceptionally well. Um,
Mm.
our business has been going 13 years. We've never gone
Mm-hmm.
back any of those years. It's only in the
Yeah.
last few years that we've kind of really gone, and that has come about through talent,
Mm-hmm.
bumping into people, making connections, um, and two obviously significant meetings for me in that regard have been with my two shareholders, Max Burt and Liz Holt, exceptional people. Um, And so our journey, such as it is, has been one of real growth in the last few years, whilst we watch other mid-weight and large traditional ad agencies struggle, and
Mm.
most other firms, I don't know. I mean, most other firms in our lane, staying afloat or contracting would be the honest
Mm.
appraisal. So I feel really um, proud of the fact that during a recession, independence stands up and
Yeah.
independence starts to look more viable, more valuable uh, when decisions are being made at a network level about which brands survive, thrive, or just get dumped. And I have a
Mm.
degree of sympathy for the people that have built them. I know some of these people. Um, Mango is a great brand, and it's sort of sad that one has to
Mm.
other for
Mango.
the other to live. Frankly, so it's a really tumultuous time.
Yeah.
Very tumultuous.
It is, and it's interesting you mentioned the decisions to, as we call it now, retire brands, which is, I think, an interesting way to describe it. Um, so we've seen Mango, I believe, I don't know if it still exists, but at one point it really was the hottest PR firm
Absolutely, yeah,
in
without
Australia
question.
and New Zealand. Um, and that has, I think, been swallowed up uh, within sort of the group. Porter Novelli, of course, now is not operating. I think even there was I can remember when Omnicom PR had, was it Gavin Anderson um, in Australia, and that was a pretty substantial business as well. Do you think it really matters, though? I mean, is it not just a part of the evolution and growth and progress of business that some brands will fall by the wayside?
Well, when they're brands like DDB, if we move to a different holding company, I mean, I just think that's a real travesty. I didn't understand that. Couldn't get my
Mm,
head around it. Um, and I think it's unfortunate for the people that are caught up in these businesses, who, in many,
mhm,
have often it's years of their lives, and yeah, it's symptomatic of a crazy time in
mhm,
in the development of our industry. I don't
mm,
offer any solutions today, but I do offer some
mm,
sympathies for people that are caught up in it, 100%. And yet there remains opportunity amongst all of that, and that is
Mm.
for independent firms. I would suggest to you.
So I was speaking to members of the CPRA yesterday, which is the Australian PR Association, effectively. And I always find it interesting doing these kinds of sessions because you learn from the questions that are posed to you. And the sense I got from many of the agency heads on that call, and many of them are leading independent firms, is they are concerned not only about the broader economic situation, which you've alluded to. You know, it's not easy. There's been recessionary pressure. There's inflation. It's not been easy to grow, but they're also, I think, concerned that in this sort of new era of AI and so forth, they will somehow lose out versus the bigger players, and that scale is more valuable in this kind of period. And I wonder how you view that.
Uh, I keep coming back up. We talk a lot as a business about surface area for brands, the brands that we represent, and through the work that we do, encouraging them to stretch into different areas for impact and engagement and connection. I think in the professional services world, it's kind of no different. And I
Mm,
don't think you get 1,000 points just for showing up looking really big. I think you get more points for showing up uh, looking curious, looking engaged, and wanting to make a connection with the client directly, if you can, um, and provide a more personalized, intimate service. I would
mm,
suggest, and
yeah.
the lives that we lead with Black Mirror influencing so much of it. I think today in the AI LLM world we live in, personal connection and relationship is paramount. And I just don't think being at scale gets you
Mm.
anything as deserving as that.
So the virtues of independence, if anything, are more important in this
Oh yeah,
era.
again, I couldn't disagree with that. I think this is an age of independence. Um, uh, and particularly here in New Zealand, I think we've got more cuts to come. I would
Mm,
suggest uh,
okay.
whether that's on the Omnicom side or not, I don't know, but I just can't see how it's sustainable with as many as they have. Sadly, that phrase "you
Mm,
can't shrink your way to greatness" rings true here. But I would have
mm.
thought, we're into mid-February. I would have thought in 3 or 4 months, perhaps some more come.
Yeah, it's depressing. So you left Omnicom in 2013, founded One Plus One. What was your thinking then? Because 11 was doing pretty well at that point. Why
Yes,
go out on
yes.
your own?
Well, it's the question that lots of people ask themselves. Some act on. In my case, I had felt I had a pretty lengthy apprenticeship running a business that, for all intents and purposes, was mine, but wasn't. I think the phrase it's like a Clayton's business, and
Mhm,
so I was able to use those training wheels successfully to pivot straight into doing something that I just knew had to work, and there's an old, I think it's like Creedence Clearwater Revival. Everybody knows them as a hugely successful, mainstream, popular band, number one hits up the wazoo.
mhm,
But that actually took them 12, 13 years to crystallize the sound, to get the right team, um, to play enough songs, frankly. And we're no different in the sense that it has taken us years to get to where we are now. And
mm,
it's sort of the feeling of baking in to what we do as practitioners and as a business of constantly getting better. Um,
okay.
I don't think AI can drum that sort of culture or ethos into the way you go about growing a business. So that's something increasingly I feel really passionate about, personal relationships predicated on getting better.
Mm. That was the first Credence Clearwater Revival reference on this podcast. I'm just hopeful that our Gen Z viewers are
Yeah,
familiar
yeah,
with with that one.
perhaps
But
not.
yeah, it's interesting also to talk about your growth and performance, because from what I understand, the last 3 or 4 years in New Zealand have been somewhat tough. I don't know if it's been a recession for all of that time, but certainly for some of that time. And yet
Yeah.
you've doubled billings, doubled headcount. Um, how how have you done it?
A lot of hard work, a lot of focus, a lot of discipline, and the caliber of people we've been able to onboard. You know, it's it's no simpler than that actually. And surface area connections that we make as people, the networks that we can now pull on to, co-opt people onto the bus.
Hmm.
Frankly, and we like to, foster those areas of ambition to keep getting better amongst the team. So I'm supremely proud, frankly, of all of them and the way in which they've grown. Um, and the caliber of the leadership team we have now too is exceptional. So it's been great for me to devolve some of the stuff that used to consume me in the early years of the business. Um,
Mm,
and our industry rewards energy, and so I think we still try to bring that in spades, frankly, to the interactions that we have with our clients, to the targets that we set for ourselves, um, and thankfully, it seems to be working.
mm. But isn't this presumably a formula that you know you would expect successful agencies to follow? I- Is this not the case in
Well, I
New
mean,
Zealand, for example?
I'm my experience and age and stage affords me with the insight that these moments of
Mm,
commercial and cultural impact that firms like ours can have, are not forever. And if we go back
mm,
in our conversation, we've been talking about holding company decisions to integrate brands, to ditch brands. So what we have now is actually, I think, quite special, and it becomes more special when you think, well, it's not going to be forever. Certainly,
mm,
the size of the business and the way we can respond to clients, it's awesome. Don't get me wrong, but it's a window in history, really. If you think about it, Mango 30 years in business, um,
mm,
gone one day the next. So it's not forever. It's quite fragile. It's quite special. Let's nurture it and let's friggin' go. Is my position, frankly. Um, and that makes the window of being really good tight. And I think that crystallizes where the energy goes.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it because, yes, if you look back, there's a lot of firms who've had moments,
Yeah.
um, and then they don't always last. So I think you do have to be honest about that sometimes. But if
Mm.
you're looking forward, and this is, of course, a question that gets asked a lot, how do you see the industry evolving? What kind of skills are you looking to invest in? What kind of talent becomes more important?
I think the sort of talent that, well, we like exceptional people, frankly, people that are exceptional human beings, curious, sociable, confident. I just don't see any of this diminishing in value. These are
Hmm.
character traits, I think, that become more scarce with shortened attention spans, and even simple things like in our firm, we're in the office 3 days a week.
Hmm.
Uh, that's a post-COVID hangover, but it works really well for us. We aren't mandated to do anything by someone in a different country that might decide 4 days is better. We can stick with 3 days. But even for younger members of our team, I do fret sometimes that the 3 day model precludes them from doing the learning that they could have done back in the day when we were all there 5 days a week, because it's that
Mm.
interpersonal. connectivity, learning by osmosis, all of those sorts of things um, that you miss. So personal relationships would be at the heart of what we will continue to look for. Um, we're making adaptations and integrations with AI, such as it is, all the time, and it's informing our work and our client approach. So it's a thing, but it's not distracting us from, our client work or our plans to keep growing. Um,
Mm.
and we are very excited, I think, for us anyway, as a business, about what 2026 can look like on the government relations front. So that's an
Mm.
area that we've seen in Wellington and are prioritising. So that for us will be a crucial part of how we show up and succeed this year.
That is interesting because government relations and public affairs more broadly has been one of the key growth areas for the industry in recent years. Um, in many markets, I've observed this. Certainly in Asia, but in Europe and the Americas as well. You could even argue it's been one of the few. It's been one of the strongest growth areas, and also one of the most unique in a way because it hasn't been easy for agencies to find sustainable growth in this environment. What's driving it, particularly in New Zealand?
Well, it's an election year. Um,
Mm,
and we would argue now, this year more than ever, if you want to connect with decision makers, this is the time to be doing it. So that has in part informed why now for us as a business. But the seeds of this had been sowing for some years prior, and we'd been
mm,
referring work. Um, this is the wonderful thing about doing business in a place like New Zealand. There's, I talk about connection. It's highly probable that through your own network, you might be able to fudge your way into a meeting of significance or a corner of one of the corners of power for a discussion. But in order to really move it along, at the heart of that, you need personal relationships, deep personal relationships. So that's something we're pursuing, excited by, and it won't be really treated any differently to the other sorts of component parts of our business.
mm. It's interesting when I asked you about the type of skills you're looking for. You talked about character first and
Mm.
foremost. You didn't really talk about functional skills, or usually when I ask that question, people will say to me, "Oh, well, we're looking for data, we're looking for tech fluency, we're looking for people who understand public affairs." You didn't mention any of that. It was much more about character. Is that for you? That's more important than whatever
It's
the
a
functional skills might be.
it's a great question, and I think the answer is yes. One assumes that people come with a degree of technical and professional competence for any given role, but it's those
Mm,
softer traits or tendencies that I would look for.
mm,
Um, and I think, again, I'd come back to the point I made earlier. I think are going to become scarcer in the world that we live in the years to
mhm,
come. So the ability to intuit, connect, see stuff, I think is really important. And we're lucky here in New Zealand. The new grads are all exceptionally polished and have had some
mhm,
degree of work experience and super bright. And yet, at the heart of what you see is often a slight deterioration in those softer skills, like people who can walk out of university and then start having a conversation about anything. Um, it's what you want, right?
Can you train those kinds of skills?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely.
okay. And you mentioned the importance of networks, which is clear, I think. But does that pose a challenge sometimes if for younger people who maybe, they don't have those kinds of networks, they maybe if they haven't gone to the right schools or universities, they may not know the right
Uh,
people. Is that a challenge from an inclusion perspective?
Again, it's a good question. I think in New Zealand we have those challenges. Um,
Mm,
but the thing that I really try to drum home to the younger members of our team is the fact that on day one, actually before they've even graduated, their careers have started.
mm,
So the people that they're meeting right from day one have the ability to influence how their career opens up. Just
mm,
today, without a word of a lie, we have this thing called 1+1 Academy, and
mm,
it pulls in people from my network, the network of the business, people who have an opinion and stuff to offer up to make our team better. So today we had a guy called Blake Crosby, who is currently the head of Plus 61 in Australia, a brand that was stood up, I think has 60 odd people, a unique working model relationship with Telstra, one of the big telcos, um, and a singular relationship with Bear Meets Eagle on Fire, probably the most creative ad agency in the world right now. So Blake gave us, our team, an hour of his time.
mm,
It's about, how long is it since we both worked together at TBWA? Probably 15 years. And
mm,
yet, here I am talking about personal relationships and connections.
mm.
That's an example, I think, of what you can pull out of life and pull out of your network, should you seek it out.
Yeah. No, I think one. I actually someone asked me about this the other day, and we had a conversation. Your network is so important and so valuable, and I don't think people always realize how valuable it can be.
Yeah.
Um, but it needs to be maintained and sustained, and you have to value it yourself. Otherwise,
There's also the old adage about
um,
how it tends to skew 10 years either side.
mm, okay.
Something
What's
to be
that?
mindful of. Well, one's network sort of goes by, you know, a decade either side. It sort of makes sense, really.
Ah, yeah. So tell us what New Zealand brings to the PR world. What is something that you feel is maybe overlooked or underrated and we should be paying more attention to?
Oh, I would think ultimately the work,
Hmm.
ultimately the work, the most lauded piece of work in New Zealand last year was for a exceptional campaign done by a competitor of ours, PED PR.
Hmm.
And I encourage people to go and look at it because actually, on every metric, it's a standout piece of work. Authentic, true to our culture. Um, so, so maybe, uh, yeah, a perspective on the quality of the work. Traditionally, New
Mm.
Zealand advertising agencies have been super successful
Yeah.
at um,
Calenso and
absolutely. So,
mm,
incredibly well awarded, and in Australia too. I think New Zealand's challenge is to start producing work that has followed the ad agency's influence. Don't think New
mm,
Zealand's coming anywhere near close enough to doing that. So that's probably a
mm.
challenge for us. Um,
Okay.
yeah, that'll be the main one.
So what was the campaign you mentioned? If we should I'll
Oh, I
mention
think
the
it's
name
called
of it in the
World's
notes.
Greatest Marker. Might be the Google search, something like that.
Okay. All right. Excellent. And final words as the industry continues to evolve, as we see, more consolidation, I think, at the bigger end of the scale. What's your advice to independent agency founders who, it's not always the easiest of jobs. It's a tough environment. And
Yeah,
what would you say to them?
I'd say stay connected and stay
Mm,
energized. Um, to essentials that if you don't have, it's going to make growing the business a challenge.
mm,
So over index on connection And I don't think it's a bad thing to over index on energy either.
Hmm.
Increase the surface area of the business through exceptionally talented people. That always
Mm.
helps. Every hire, I think, has to have or give you confidence that the person that's been hired is exceptional. It's quite a high bar, but if you can hold that firm, you're going to get an amazing team. Look after the team, and stay ambitious would be my main messages.
All right. Well, these are good words as we head into another crazy year. Um, so thank you very much, Kelly. I hope there
Thank
won't be
you.
too much. I hope there won't be too much more agency turbulence in the South Pacific. But we shall see. Thank you very
Yeah.
much for coming on the podcast.
Amazing. Thanks so much.